Hello and welcome to my studio. I'm Jessie and this is the Knit Up and Dye podcast, episode 131, Orange You Happy? I want to start with a very heartfelt thank you. You guys are really, really wonderful. I was extremely nervous about trying to start my podcast again, and within literally minutes of the upload having completed, some of you had jumped in, had watched already before I could even post that I had aired an episode, and just sent me such wonderful, supportive messages. Thank you. That was just so wonderful, so wonderful. So there aren't words. I have so much gratitude for you. This time has been a lonely time for a lot of us, where we aren't getting out, we aren't being social, or our social interaction is only digital. And I missed doing this, and so we're going to keep doing this for a while. Orange You Happy? Orange is one of my favorite colors. I love orange. It happens to be a very flattering color on my skin tone, and so I can get away with wearing it. And it brings me joy. Red feels a little bit angry to me sometimes, and yellow isn't always the best color on me. And orange is just that nice in-between, happy. It's warm and it's welcoming, it's approachable, it's joyful. It reminds me of autumn, my favorite time of year. And so you have seen and will see orange in a lot of my projects. I am going to continue down through the pile of sweaters, and the next one on the pile is the sweater I refer to as my $1 million sweater. I love this sweater. I have worn this once or twice. I just found a big snag in it though, and that doesn't make me very happy. Well, how about we work on that snag while we talk? I have at my hand, somewhere nearby here, a tool that will help me fix this. I am quite sure. How could I not have a tool that would help me fix this? There must be a small crochet hook here somewhere. You know, even a small double point will help. All I need to do is pull that snag back through to the other side and get it to align with the rest of the yarn that it was being pulled from. Do you get snags? You must. We all get snags. I have dogs, and that is the number one way to get a snag, is when you come home from work and they are super happy to see you and they jump all over you, despite their training not to. There we go. So most snags happen when just one stitch gets tagged and pulled. A lot of snags are even more complicated than that, because instead of the whole stitch getting caught and pulled, only one ply of the yarn will get caught and pulled. And so it's pulling along the whole length of several stitches, and that is exactly what's happened here. And with a little bit of manipulation and some wiggling, it's gone. It's absorbed right back in, and I can't even see it now. Perfect. That was easy. They don't get cut. Don't cut your snags. You're cutting your line of yarn. And I know that that sounds like I'm telling you something super, super basic, but I've made that mistake. I have thought, oh, it's just a spare line. It's an extra piece of thread. It's the tail of something. Investigate before using scissors. Always investigate before using scissors. So let me pull up some information about this sweater for you so I can speak semi-intelligibly about it. I remember that I found this pattern in Vogue magazine. I had a subscription which has ended, unfortunately. And it was a two-tone sweater. It had a different collar color. I think the cuffs were different, and I think it had like a band around the bottom. I don't recall the original pattern, but I do remember it had two colors in it. So this is my $1 Million Sweater. The pattern is called Lozenge. It is by Fatima Hines. And I knit this using my Dye Monkey Yarns Double Shuffle. Double Shuffle is a tweedy yarn. It's got those extra little noops in it there that have this brown, black, and cream. Extra little bits of nylon that don't pick up the dye, so you get this extra texture in there. This was a fun knit. I found the pattern in Vogue magazine, and I had some issues. I'm going to be real honest about it. I had some issues, and it had nothing to do with the designer of the pattern. It had everything to do with typos and problems in the publication. And I know that I talked about this in a previous episode. I'm quite sure I had started this, or I've written about it. I'm not, okay, I don't remember. Maybe I talked about it, maybe I wrote about it. But there were issues with the pattern. I struggled to get gauge, first thing. The needle that was suggested, I had to go up 2 needle sizes to get gauge, which is really unusual for me. And I don't remember if I ever looked up to see if that was a typo against her original recommendation, or if that was what she did. Maybe she has a really loose stitch and I'm just tighter than her. I don't know. But I went up to a US 10 on this pattern. The published pattern in Vogue failed miserably in being size inclusive. And while I am a skinny mini, I am unusual. I am not your average body shape or size. A lot of people are a lot more huggable than I am. I'm just a twig. This really was limiting. They offered chest sizes 35, 37, and 39 inches around. That's crazy. I personally had to knit the 37 for myself. That means that there's only one size bigger than me available listed in that pattern. My expectation is that when she gets the rights back to publish this pattern independently, she will be far more size inclusive. I think she designed specifically to the parameters of the magazine, which tells you something about that magazine. Because her other patterns, when I looked at her other patterns, there was a lot more size inclusion in them. And that's important. If you're going to design something for everyone. So the pattern was originally published in Vogue Knitting Holiday 2019, and to date I haven't seen any errata published for it. There may have been, I haven't gone back to check. But if you are a Ravelry user, or if you simply go to Ravelry and look at my project page, you will see every one of the problems that I found listed out. I created errata for this. My project page has been viewed very heavily because I have so much of it on there. One of the things that I changed was she has published in the back, in the pattern, on the back of the neck, she has a pearl detail here. I don't know that the pattern had it published correctly. It seemed off-center and strange. I thought it was an error straight up, and I went into stockinette on the back of the neck immediately after the ribbing. There's stockinette everywhere else. I don't understand why there was a pearl detail there. But to her credit, that's her design. It's what she wanted, and I have seen notes that that was intentional where other people had asked her about that. Also in the pattern this is a raglan. It's a top-down, in-the-round seamless. I forgot to tell you guys. It's a raglan increase. Her particular raglan increase, she did like a lacy increase with a yarn over, so that there's little eyelets along the raglan on both sides of the sleeves. I looked at this and I saw a tweedy yarn that I was using. It's a heavy weight, it's a bulky, well, it's an Aran weight headed for a bulky yarn anyway. And I just thought the eyelets seemed a little bit out of place for me. So I did a regular make one left, make one right. Same as in other raglan top downs. That just fit my personal style and my personal choices a little bit better. Otherwise, it's got a lovely very light cable texture detail where there's a reverse stockinette in each of the diamonds. And there's just a slight cabling happening where you're twisting stitches to get down through. And the patterning is on the front and the back, so you can see this lovely detail coming and going. And I'm trying to get the light to hit it just right so you guys can really see that detailing. It's lovely. With this Tweedy yarn, it's a little bit more subtle, and I'm perfectly content with that. I really love how this came out. I knit it to corrected instruction, and I found that when I wore it, and I've got great long monkey arms, that's me, that's who I am, the sleeves just weren't long enough, and I had to go back and undo my ribbing and add onto each of the sleeves. And I also added on to the length of the sweater. I undid the ribbing at the bottom and added to the length of the sweater. That is the beauty. One of the huge advantages of top down in the round sweaters is that once you try it on, you know whether it fit or not, and you can go back and you can undo the length and you can shorten it or lengthen it as you need. Sometimes just trying it on pre-block, post-block isn't enough. Sometimes you need real world time. You need to be in your office. You need to be stretching and bending and reaching and stapling and turning in your chair and standing up and walking to the printer to know how it fits, how it rides. Does it stay up? Does it fall back down when you raise your arms up over your head and you come back down? Is it all up here, or did it seat back properly? Are the sleeves comfortable? Can you push them up and have them stay up? Or when you're walking around, you discover that you're always long-wristed and you're forever doing this, and the other sleeve is getting shorter when you do. These things matter. So in my real world experience, the one day that I wore it, I did discover that the sleeves just wore a little bit too short, and I corrected that, and the body was a little bit too short. This was an enjoyable knit. It was a giant puzzle for me. Because there were mistakes in the publication, I spent time making sure that I understood, that I could compare against the picture as much as possible. Some of those pictures aren't real good at showing detail. They don't want to give anything away. And just researching and making sure that I got it right and I got it the way I wanted it, and that I notated everything clearly for anybody else that was struggling with this. If I didn't know what I know, if I didn't have the knitting experience that I have, I wouldn't have finished it. I wouldn't have finished it. And this is true of several of the sweater patterns that I've started out of magazine publications. I love them. They're beautiful. The photography is lovely. What they're not telling me is that they've got double stick tape, that they have banana clips in the back, that they have the model angled just so, with the light just so that you can't see what's wrong with part of it. And I've had numerous patterns that I've started out of magazine publications that had just enough errata in them that I couldn't tell that it was an error. And so I thought I was doing it wrong, and I get frustrated. And sometimes they over condense. I mean, they only have so many column inches that they can work with, and they over condense, and you get a lot of that at the same time, 2.5 paragraphs down. So if you didn't read far enough ahead on the next instruction to remind yourself about what you read the first time, you can miss something and have to rip back 8 inches. I understand why we do that. I know there's a better way to do that. I've seen 100 patterns that are better at explaining how to do multiple actions at the same time. But magazine publications as a whole really kind of need to step up. There have been advances in pattern writing and in communication, and they could do better. They could do better. None of this, again, is the fault of the designer. I have seen the designer's other work. Her work is beautiful. This is wholly about the magazine industry. I strongly recommend paying for patterns directly from your designers, because you have direct one-on-one feedback and help, and you can go to them And it is extremely rare that you find a designer that isn't willing to talk to you about it, that isn't willing to make a correction or explain an action. I love when I get emails from people when they're having difficulty with one of my patterns, because I learn how they think. I learn how to communicate better. And I have an opportunity to provide one-on-one customer service and give you something you love. And that's important. It's an experience and it's an object. And if you love both parts of it, yay! Let's see if I have any other information for you about this pattern. Like I said, it was in Vogue Holiday Edition 2019. And there was one other weird instruction that I never got a handle on in the pattern. At the point where the sleeves are moved to the holding yarn, when you're working down, you come down and you get to a point where you put this arm on holding yarn and you work the body in the round going down. There's this weird instruction that tells you to cast one stitch onto the sleeve. And for the life of me, I could not figure out how to add a cast on stitch to the stitches that were being moved to waste yarn without the stitches that I was moving being worked. Like something, I never understood it. I never understood it. So basically my sleeve count was down by one stitch at the point that I put it on the holding yarn, and when I went to pick up and I did the pick up under the arm, I added one stitch. That was it. That was the only big change. So, big deal. One stitch in the scope of things in this particular case was a little over 1/4 of an inch. It didn't make that big an impact in my life. There's wiggle room in every pattern. And if you don't understand something and you can't get help with it and it's only one stitch, don't kill yourself over it. It's a sweater. This is life. You're going to still be warm, and nobody is ever going to be close enough to you investigating your sweater and your knitting to go, oh, she didn't cast on that one stitch when she moved these to the holding yarn. Who would know? You know, because I told you. Because I cheated. Because I couldn't figure it out. I did not understand it, and now you know. Even I don't know. So that's my $1 million sweater, and I referred to that as my $1 million sweater because of the amount of effort that went into it and because of the diamond pattern on it. That is pretty much what I've got for you guys today. I'm just gonna sit with you and talk to you and go down through the sweaters here and the projects that I've done in the meantime, and kind of in the background I got other projects going on. I am going to start to do more dye videos, I hope. I have completed one, and they're going to be available exclusively to my patrons, to my Patreon group. I had always intended to have exclusive videos over there, and I just never got around to it. And I felt very much that I was replicating the same stuff to everybody. I want to show everybody everything. And it became such a chore to try and sort out and do something extra, to have something exclusive for my paying patrons. And it's very important to me to give back to you. If you're one of my patrons, thank you. I appreciate you more than I have ever been able to communicate. I would not be able to have come back this time to do the podcasting with you if it weren't for the new software that I bought for my video editing. I learned it very quickly. I think my videos are coming out good. I think that the editing is quicker. It compresses faster. It's faster to get it up to YouTube for you. There's actually one less step because it compresses and uploads in a single step instead of 2 separate steps. So this has been a huge advantage to me. And without that software to make this process quicker and less stressful, I wouldn't have continued. I wouldn't have been able to do that. My patrons bought that software for me, and I am ever grateful they made this possible once again. Thank you. in all that, what I was saying was that I'm going to split things up a little bit more than I had in the past. And you're going to see the exclusive dye videos over on Patreon. There's multiple levels. If you want access, please go take a look at that. There's a lot of different levels of access where everybody gets the same access, but not necessarily the same benefits. My blog posts are pretty much going to stay over at Patreon, and they're either going to be public or exclusive. I think I'm going to phase out my regular blog. It was too much work to have a blog post on Patreon, a blog post on Blogspot, and post things on Ravelry, and post things to Instagram, and it's just too much. So you're going to see dye videos on Patreon, you're going to see blog posts, both exclusive and open access on Patreon. You're still going to see my Instagram feed. My Instagram feeds automatically over to Facebook and to Twitter. However, I do not log into Facebook. It's too much, it's too overwhelming, and half the time I can't get in, and when I finally do get in, they've changed everything and I can't find anything again anyway. I may still post some stuff over to Pinterest. I'm not using that very often anymore, but I'm going to try to channel things a little bit and make things a little bit easier. If you're a subscriber, you get the notifications. You have the ability to click that little bell and get notifications that I've posted another episode. Otherwise, take a look over at Patreon. That's the one place that I do post. That and Instagram, forgive me, that I do post that I have just put up another episode. We're going to narrow things up. We're going to streamline things. We're going to make it easier on me so that I enjoy this more and can do more for you. I'm excited about it. The last episode was actually really easy to produce through the software. I had some fun with it. You saw my silly little crown. That makes a huge difference. Having the right tools makes the job easier to do. And in a lot of respects, between overworking and overpressurizing myself and then having an out-of-date software that was slow and clunky and not effective, all factored into some of my burnout. Some of it. That, I think, is everything. I'm really happy to be spending this time with you guys again, and I look forward to doing it again, and we're just going to keep going down through that pile and talking about whatever you message me about. So I look forward to hearing from you. Until next time, happy crafting. Bye, guys.